Do you know what this is? A Mega Bloks microfigure, released in 2002 as part of the Mega Bloks Dragons theme. Now, historically, the name Mega Bloks has always sparked some kind of conversation among construction fans. For many, the name doesn't represent innovation, but rather imitation, a company built off an expired patent, existing solely to be a cheaper alternative to LEGO. However, I believe that narrative is oversimplified. Sure, Mega started out that way, but there was a point in time where Mega Bloks wasn't just competing with LEGO, they were outperforming them. And not only did they push a trend and innovate, but they forced LEGO to change. Yet, almost no one talks about it. So today on the channel, we're diving deep into the greatest original theme Mega Bloks ever produced: Dragons. We are breaking down the events that led to its creation, how Mega briefly beat LEGO at their own game, what made the line so popular, and ultimately how it lost its identity. This is Brick Failures. But before we begin, let me tell you about this video sponsor, NordVPN. You see, a few years ago, I got hacked. And not only did I lose access to all my emails and this channel, but my private information also got leaked. Which is why when NordVPN approached me, I instantly said yes. Personally, I've been using NordVPN for a while, and I gotta say that I love it. Not only is NordVPN the world's leading VPN, but it also offers a variety of features that go way beyond its competition. Their Threat Protection Pro can detect and block at least 85% of malicious websites, and their Dark Web Monitor alerts you if your email shows up in any leaked databases. Plus, one account covers up to 10 devices, so you can share that same protection with your friends and family. And right now, with my promo code BRICKOPINIONS, you can get 4 additional months for free with all 2-year plans. So, go to nordvpn.com/brickopinions or click the link in the description. And with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, it's completely risk-free. So try it with zero commitment and browse securely. As a NordVPN user, I genuinely can't recommend it enough. Please don't wait until something goes wrong and protect yourself today. Anyways, let's get back to the video. Mega Bloks. Founded in 1967 by Victor Bertrand and his wife Rita, began as a small Montreal-based toy distributor called Ritvic Holdings. Later expanding its operations into plastic injection, tooling, design, and marketing, quickly establishing itself as a major player in the Canadian toy industry. However, Victor wasn't satisfied with domestic success, as he wanted an international reach. Inspired by the growth of LEGO, Victor believed that construction toys had so much potential, yet LEGO had no competition. So, he created the Mega Blok, an oversized building block system designed specifically for small hands. Now, at the time, many people tried to convince Victor against the idea, but he thought that if he made a larger, more affordable construction system, he could find success. And against all expectations, the gamble paid off. Mega Bloks debuted in 1984 and quickly secured major retail placement. Within a year, the brand was widely available across the continent, with bigger companies reportedly expressing interest in acquiring the brand. However, Victor declined, as he viewed Mega Bloks as a long-term strategic foundation, not a quick exit. Mega was so successful that in 1991, the company launched the Micro Mega Blok, a one-to-one recreation of the classic LEGO brick, and because the patent had expired, it was completely legal. However, the product was nothing groundbreaking. Mega started out by releasing a couple of buildable dinosaur kits with sculpted headpieces and alternate builds, in the same style as the LEGO Basics line. Later, they introduced more traditional playsets with the Legends theme that included a castle, a Viking, mythological creatures, and Mega's very own micro figure. In hindsight, Mega's strategy was obvious. They weren't trying to out-innovate LEGO or create their own original properties, they were trying to undercut them. Clearly, Legends was based on Castle, which had been ongoing since the 70s, but they thought that by offering bigger sculpted elements at cheaper prices, consumers would perceive Mega's products as a better deal. And surprisingly, the strategy kind of worked. During the 90s, Mega experienced explosive growth, averaging roughly a 70% annual increase in sales, as every year they expanded into more and more countries and introduced new themes. But by the late 90s, the market began to shift. Kids no longer just wanted generic castles and spaceships, they wanted recognizable worlds with rich stories. LEGO executives noticed this, and in 1997, they secured the rights to Star Wars, which proved to be a massive hit. And Mega Bloks, well, they simply couldn't respond. Their entire competitive advantage over LEGO was large elements and affordability. Acquiring a major Hollywood license at the time meant massive royalties and higher prices. If Mega stopped being the cheaper alternative, then what exactly made them different? So instead of chasing bigger brands, Mega adjusted its strategy. In 2001, the highest grossing film was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, a property LEGO already controlled and was seeing enormous success with. But the second highest grossing film of the year was Lord of the Rings and the Fellowship of the Ring, an epic high fantasy saga with large armies, epic battles, and rich lore. And considering Lord of the Rings had already 2 sequels scheduled for 2002 and 2003, Mega began developing a product line that would inherently have the same appeal as Lord of the Rings, but without paying expensive licenses. Enter Dragons. In 2002, Mega Bloks launched Dragons, a high fantasy action theme depicting 2 armies, the Drathenar and the Warfang, fighting over control of the legendary dragon crystals. Sure, the premise was simple, but honestly, the toys are great. For starters, the line introduced a new type of microfigure for Mega. Gone were the oddly shaped heads and awkward body proportions. Instead, the figures featured highly detailed sculpts. Sure, they still somewhat resembled the LEGO minifigure, but the added detail and edgy aesthetic easily captured kids' attention. Released in fall 2002, the first wave featured a variety of sets ranging from $7 to $50. On the lower end, Mega introduced what they called war chests. These were small boxes designed to function as army builders, as both the Warfang and the Drathenar received 2. One was a traditional triple pack, and another was a weapons pack. Moving over to playsets, at $10, Mega released the Dragon Slayer, which included the golden warrior named Paydrak and the green dragon Torturing. And here's where the line really found its identity. The dragons themselves were awesome. Did they use traditional building blocks? No, they were fully sculpted bodies that featured articulated limbs, flapping wings, glowing eyes, and a removable dragon crystal. And because every soldier had a metal plate inside their body, the dragons included built-in magnetic claws that would allow them to pick figures up directly from the battlefield. A small yet brilliant detail that made the line extremely fun to play with. Moreover, at $20, we got the Battle Gate, which included a small stone structure, 8 soldiers, and the orange dragon named Talonblaze. At $30, we got the Sorcerer's Lair, featuring a castle-like structure, 10 warriors, and the Black Dragon Stoneburner. At $40, we got the Warrior's Fortress, delivering a massive castle build that included 10 figures and 2 dragons. And finally, at $50, Mega closed out the year with the Dragon's Challenge. Featuring a total of 24 figures, this set functioned more like a multi-purpose board game than a traditional playset, giving kids the option to play chess, checkers, or melee. However, the inclusion of an orange dragon also made it ideal for traditional play, allowing kids to rebuild the battlefield however they wanted. Overall, the first year of Dragons was ambitious, but for the most part, it delivered. Since Mega Bloks chose to rely less on traditional building blocks, instead emphasizing larger sculpted pieces, this gave the line its own distinct identity. And Mega also launched a dedicated website for dragons, where kids could explore the characters' backstories or even learn the dragon language. The only problem was that the Warfangs had extremely fragile hands, which are very prone to breaking. Still, that didn't really affect sales. According to former LEGO employee Mike Greyhawk, in 2002, Mega Bloks overtook LEGO to become the top-ranking construction toy. And like we talked about in the Ninjago video, this event forced LEGO to drastically change its direction. Looking back at it now, it's clear Mega Bloks understood the massive demand for fantasy toys and used that momentum to establish its own IP. Now the question was, how long could that momentum last for? In 2003, Mega continued expanding Dragons as they began the year with a major narrative shift. Remember this guy, Paydrak, the Dragon Slayer? Well, according to the lore, instead of killing the green dragon, Torturing actually accepts him as his master. Paydrak then unites the Drathenars and the Warfangs into a single golden armor faction called the Dragar. And in terms of sets, we got 3. At $15, we got the Dragon Battle, which included 4 soldiers and a golden dragon named Darkwrath. At $20, we got the Fire Mountain, featuring a volcanic build, 6 Dragar soldiers, and a brand new 2-headed dragon mold. And at $40, the Dragon Tower served as a Toys R Us exclusive, which depicted a large castle build with 14 Dragar soldiers and a golden dragon. And later in 2003, Mega would launch the next chapter in the saga under the subtitle Crystal Wars. And this is where the world truly expanded, as 2 new factions were introduced. First, we have the Norwegian Marauders, which were an ocean-based army clad in oxidized copper armor. And the mutant Vorgans were troll-like creatures with green skin, fur, and crude wooden weaponry. Set-wise, Mega continued with their same approach, as we got 3 new war chests, one for the Dragar, one for the Norwegians, and one for the Vorgans. At $10, we got the Vorgan Attack, featuring 3 Vorgan soldiers and a brand new type of dragon called the Swamp Dragon, complete with a fur torso, magnetic claws, and flapping wings. At $20, we got the Sea Dragon, including a dockside build, 6 figures, and another entirely new dragon sculpt with light-up eyes, flapping wings, and magnetic claws. At $30, we got the Marauder's Cliff, depicting the Norwegians' homeland, including 11 figures and a green sea dragon. At $40, we got the Vorgon Stronghold, delivering a mountainous fortress with 10 figures and 2 swamp dragons. And at $50, we got the Man O' War, which introduced a massive Viking style ship with 12 warriors and a sea dragon. And retailing for $80, we got the Dragar Castle. Now this was the ultimate set, as it featured a massive red fortress with 16 figures and 3 dragons. And finally, Mega also released this set, the Ultimate Battle, depicting the final battle between the Voltharion and the Warfang before uniting under Paedrak. However, the lack of information available on the set leads me to believe it was some type of retail exclusive. Still, 30 figures and 5 dragons for a set is a fantastic deal. Overall, 2003 did not reinvent dragons, but it definitely built upon its foundation. We got more factions, more dragon types, more lore, and bigger sets. But crucially, still affordable. Sure, most kids couldn't get the $80 Dragar Castle, but the $10 Vorgon Attack or the $50 Sea Dragon still remained great choices. Gone were the days where Mega had to knock off LEGO. Now, by choosing to set themselves apart, they could find their own audience and tell their own stories. Now, 2004 was a very interesting year. At this point, Mega Bloks had never been this relevant. Not only was Dragon selling well, but at the same time, LEGO had a horrific 2003. Where they lost over $250 million. For Mega Bloks, this became a window of opportunity, as they began acquiring big-name licenses like Marvel, while also heavily investing into dragons. For this year, we got a new wave subtitled Iron Raiders. Formed from former Dragar, Norwegian, and Morgan soldiers, they weren't fighting for crystals or power, but rather simple loot. At $5, we got 2 war chests, a recolor of the ballista and a recolored catapult. At $10, we got a Raider Attack depicting 3 soldiers and a white swamp dragon. At $15, we got the Raider Sea Assault with 2 Norwegians and 3 Raiders plus a brown classic dragon. At $40, we got the Raiders Ambush featuring 2 Norwegians, 10 Raiders, and 2 dragons. And finally, at $50, we got the Raiders Keep, depicting the Raiders Fortress, which included 4 Dragars, 6 Raiders, and 2 dragons. Now personally, I'm not that big a fan of this wave, as it felt more like filler. Sure, we did get a new faction, but they heavily reused parts from the previous 2 years with no new dragons being introduced. And sadly, the retooling didn't stop there. Later in the year, we got a second sub-theme called Elementals. As the name suggests, this line featured Ghost Elemental Dragons. In total, we got 4 sets. A Water Ghost Dragon with blue Norwegians, an Earth Ghost Dragon with green Vorgons, a Tempest Gold Dragon with yellow Dragar, and a Fire Ghost Dragon which introduced a new red faction called the Firen. Thankfully, this isn't everything Mega had to offer. So far this year, Mega had heavily relied on old molds and recolors. Well, it turns out that's because Mega was saving most of its budget for the fall. In September 2004, they debuted Dragons, Fire and Ice. Now here's where things can get a little confusing. Specifically for Fire and Ice, Mega, in partnership with Bardell Entertainment, produced a 73-minute direct-to-DVD movie. However, the toys in the movies kinda tell slightly different stories. The movie depicts a world without dragons, where the Norwegians and the Dragars have been at war for hundreds of years, but secretly they are being manipulated by an evil wizard named Xenos. Our protagonists are 2 dragon riders from opposing factions named Dev and Kyra, who upon acquiring elemental powers must work together with the Dragon King Thorn to save their kingdoms and defeat Xenos. However, the toys told a slightly different story. We still have Xenos, Dev, and Kyra, but the sets predominantly showcase a new faction called the Firen, which is the united army of the Dragar and Norwegians facing off against Ice Vorgons. Thus the name, Fire and Ice. And set-wise, Mega dropped the war chest concept, instead opting for a more traditional type of army builder, as we got the Ice Outpost and the Fire Sentry. On top of that, Mega also began introducing more experimental types of products, like the Dragon Eggs, featuring a brand new mold. Wave 1 retailed for $8 and consisted of a Smoke Dragon, a Frost Dragon, a Flame Dragon, and an Ice Dragon, with Wave 2 including a Strife Dragon, a Wrath Dragon, a Fury Dragon, and a Rage Dragon. But the experimentation didn't end there. Mega also introduced the Attack Dragon toys. Retailing for $20, these were large dragon heads kids could play around with, as we got an Ice Dragon and a Fire Dragon. Moving over to traditional playsets, we got the Firestorm Fortress at $30, which included Dev, a Fire and Soldier, an Ice Vorgon, and a Fire Dragon. At $40, we got the Portal of Fire, which came with 6 figures, and the Dragon King Thorn, which was a completely new sculpt and had its own unique light-up features. Now, at $50, we got a recolor of the Man O' War, now titled the Fire and Sea Phoenix Warship. And at $60, we got the Vorgon Ice Fang, consisting of a giant ice ship that included 7 figures and 2 skeletal ice dragons. Now, to finish off the year at $70, we got the Dragon Mountain. Depicting Xenos' lair, it included 15 figures, 2 elemental dragons, and tons of play features. Additionally, some sets included a promotional CD-ROM, which in a way functioned as a virtual product catalog. And on top of that, Mega also launched its own isometric flash game that allowed you to play as either Dev or Kyra, battling the Vorgons and collecting crystals through the world. Overall, 2004 once again pushed the line forward, as Dragons became a true multimedia brand with toys, movies, and games. And at this point, Mega had built something truly special, and it showed no signs of slowing down. For 2005, Mega started off the year by releasing a 12-set wave subtitled Spellcasters. Focusing more on the magical aspects of dragons, this wave depicted a side story where multiple wizards fought over control of the dragon portal. And unlike previous waves, we did not get any army builders, but rather character triple packs, as we got the Dragon Sages, the Spiritual Guild, and the Xenos Clerics. Then at $10, we got 3 sets called Summon, Unleash, and Bane, depicting wizards fighting smaller dragons. At $15, Mega introduced a new type of dragon called the Wizard Dragon. In total, we got 2, Solaris and Radiax. And while these did not have the Dragon Crystal as previous dragons, they did feature a removable helmet that enabled them to harness their power. And depending on which helmet was placed on them, their bodies could light up in different colors. At $20, we got the Wizard Sea Assault, featuring 5 figures and bringing back the double-headed dragon mold. And finally, at $30, we got the Wizard Strongbox, a dragon-led carriage that featured 2 wizards, 2 Iron Raiders, and another Wizard Dragon. Moving over to the fall, once again Mega Bloks, in partnership with Bartel Entertainment, produced a 72-minute direct-to-DVD movie called Dragons Metal Ages. Picking up where the first movie left off, the movie introduced a new faction called the Odaku, led by a sorceress named Scylla, who teams up with the evil dragon Stenhall and attempts to take down the Dragar and the Vorgons. Our heroes, Dev and Kyra, meet new allies and must once again work through their differences and defeat Scylla. Set-wise, Metal Ages was the biggest wave up to this point, as we got 2 new factions, the previously mentioned Odaku and the Ferroc, who were an elite squad formed from the Norwegian and the Dragar. And since the wave was called Metal Ages, Mega introduced more magnetic elements for kids to play with, like these. Retailing for $5, we got a bucket-style playset that featured a soldier and a cannon that could shoot magnetic pellets. Also at $5, we got a new blister-style army builder like Rampart's Victory, Battle at Odaku Armory, Norwegian Ambush, and the Dragar Cavalry. At $10, we got 2 more waves of dragon eggs, though instead of elemental dragons, these were metal dragons like Claw Dagger the Tin Dragon, Havoc Fire the Beryllium Dragon, Helios Strafe the Chromium Dragon, and Fierce Swoop the Lead Dragon, with Wave 2 featuring Argentum the Silver Dragon, Iriscore the Copper Dragon, Rutilius the Golden Dragon, and Ferrarius the Iron Dragon. And once again, some of the dragons came with a CD-ROM. Now going back to the sets, at $15, we got a reuse of the Wizard Dragon mold, now called Light Dragons. These were Dev's and Kyra's dragons from the film Aurora and Targon. At $20, we got 2 smaller sets, Screenlurker the Antimony Dragon and Dark Inferno the Nickel Dragon. At $30, we got 2 Titan Dragons, Stenhall the Titanium Dragon, and Thoron the Mercury Dragon. Moving over to more traditional playsets, Mega released these. At $40, we got 2 sets. The Odaku Armory featuring 4 figures, including Scylla and the Cobalt Dragon's Land, and the Cavern Dragon Battle, featuring 4 figures and 2 dragons as they fought over control of the Dragon Cavern. At $50, we got the Ramparts of Ryusan, featuring the Shadow Dragon Grindel, 6 figures, and a massive castle build. At $60, we got the Norwegian Destroyer, depicting a new battleship. And finally, at $70, we have the Dragar Fortress, which was a smaller version of the Dragar Castle featuring 5 figures and a dragon. But shockingly, this wasn't it. In late 2005, Mega would introduce a brand new line dubbed the Plasmiverse, where they took the Dragonade concept and expanded it across genres. Retailing for $5, Series 1 featured 6 dragons: Tailtorn, Vilewind, Brimmer, Seether, Crimson, and Boulder. Overall, I don't really know how to feel about this year. We got 3 sublines, Elementals, Metal Ages, and Plasma. And instead of building upon each other the way the first 3 years did, they all seem to be pulling in a different direction. Mega also introduced more than 5 different dragons across multiple price points. And while that technically made the line accessible to everyone, it also kind of made all these dragons blend together with very few standing out. For 2006, dragons went in a completely new direction. Gone were the Dragars, the Norwegians, and the Odaku. Now, hundreds of years had passed since the Middle Ages, and two new factions prevailed: the silver-armored Argentics on one side, and the gold-clad Aureus on the other. In a way, this was Mega's soft rebooting dragons, going back to the simple formula of two factions at war, fighting over crystals of power, now called plasma crystals. Strangely enough, we did not get any tie-in content for this wave, as we only got website lore and a flash game. Set-wise, the line also changed a bit. Under the Battlestorm Epic subtitle, dragons now featured more mythological creatures, kinda resembling the old Mega Bloks Legends theme. In terms of army builders, we got small creature 2-packs and army triple packs like Mythic Battle, Fortress Attack, Forest Expedition, Ruins Battle, Argentic's Revenge, and Aureus Assault. Mega also brought back the bigger dragon eggs with an entirely new sculpt that was compatible with the new plasma crystals. Wave 1 featured Sunblood, the Equinox Dragon, Darkcrown, the Eclipse Dragon, Cyclone Blaze, the Nova Dragon, and Circus Fire, the Solstice Dragon, with Wave 2 featuring Serpent Torch, the Horn Dragon, Iron Scales, the Royal Dragon, Fire Tile, the Plains Dragon, and Blaze Basilisk, the Hunter Dragon. Additionally, Mega also launched a Green Titan Dragon called Ringth, which was also compatible with the plasma crystals. And in terms of traditional playsets, we actually got some variety. We got two small castle structures called the Wizard's Tower, which included a Phoenix, and the Sorcerer's Turret, which included a Griffin. At $30, we got a 2-pack featuring the Terra Diver for the Argentics and the Land Strider for the Aureus. I'll also note that many people aren't fans of this set, as they argue that the vehicles are too modern for dragons, though personally, I really like this direction. At $30, we also got the Tower Bridge, featuring a massive tower bridge that both the Argentics and Aureus could fight over, and at $40, we got two more sets. The Dragonstone Battlefield, that served as a neutral battleground for both factions. Additionally, this set could connect with the previously mentioned Wizard's Tower and Sorcerer's Turret. And we also got the Siege of Raiders Keep, which was a smaller castle that reused a ton of elements, including 4 dragons and 8 figures. Then at $50, we got the Siege Chariot, which was a massive chariot led by a beast, where the Argentics raised the Aureus to capture the Spider Dragon Dragnik. And finally, the flagship set of the year was called the Battlestorm Epic Castle. This was a massive set that included 3 dragons and 8 figures, depicting the ultimate showdown between the Argentics and the Aureus. And for the Plasmiverse, we would continue to get more and more sets. For 2006, we got 3 waves. Series 2 featured another 6 dragons, with Series 3 introducing dinosaurs like a T-Rex, an Allosaur, a Dimetrodon, a Stegosaurus, a Triceratops, and a Styracosaurus. And since they all use the same ball joint system, you could actually interchange parts between them. And finally, Series 4 went back to dragons as we got 4. Overall, 2006 was a weird year. Personally, I really like the Battlestorm Epic line as it went back to basics but also introduced new ideas that didn't tear apart pre-established lore. And when it comes to Plasmiverse, well, I really do like how small and affordable these sets were, but to me, it just kind of felt like Mega was starting to milk the Dragon Egg concept. Now, for 2007, Mega as a whole would move the company in a brand new direction. Gone were the old micro figures as all their themes began adopting the brand new micro action figure that Pirates introduced. And for Dragons, this meant rebooting the line once more, going back to the Dragar and Vorgin conflict. However, this creative decision kind of split fans into two. To many, this change ruined what made Dragons cool, as the figures were simpler and sleeker, losing their edge. But personally, I really like this style of figure. Since they all use ball joints, they had a much more dynamic range, making this a better overall toy. And in terms of sets, we got a new type of army builder called the Battle Realm Booster. These came with a special figure that you had to cut from the sprues, plus 7 regular characters. Now, the cool thing about these was that the Mega developed a sort of tabletop game, as each booster also came with trading cards and a catapult, allowing you to build out your own army and battle with your friends. Additionally, Mega released a new dragon line called Battle Morphs, as each of them included a micro action figure and featured significantly larger dragon skulls. In total, we got 8. Ravenback, the Royal Glider Dragon, Rawlslung, the Ocean Dragon, Balefire, the Fire Dragon, Clawshock, the Electric Dragon, Fangreen, the Acid Dragon, Ice Blaze, the Ice Dragon, Vipenroar, the Black Vulture Dragon, and Trefalkir, the Jungle Predator Dragon. Moving over to traditional playsets, Mega brought their bust playsets into Plasma Dragons, including the Darkwoods Ambush, the Fire Cavern, and the Ravine Battle. We also got bigger playsets like the Vorgin Plasma Fortress and the Valor Castle. Now finally, Mega also released 3 waves of the Plasma Eggs, which offered more variety. Series 5 once again consisted of 6 dragons, Series 6 then introduced cyborgs, and Series 7 featured creeps, like a werewolf, a mummy, a zombie, a vampire, a gargoyle, and a ghoul. As a whole, I really like the product Mega Bloks released in 2007. On one hand, the dragons themselves were better than ever, and the new direction Mega was taking dragons was actually not bad. Sure, longtime fans didn't love it, but for newer kids, this line was toyetic and play-driven. However, there was one major problem. You see, during late 2006 and early 2007, Mega Bloks was hit with multiple lawsuits over their Magnetics line, which was deemed a choking hazard and removed from store shelves.
Now, the financial repercussions of this were significant, as Mega began implementing hard, cost-cutting measures like using cheaper plastics, decreasing paint applications, with the overall quality of their products decreasing. For 2008, Mega was still recovering from the terrible 2007, but they were confident that with their new products, they could bounce back. However, at Toy Fair, neither dragons nor plasma were shown, leading people to believe both had been cancelled. In actuality, we did get a few new sets, however they felt more like afterthoughts. For the Plasma Eggs, we got Series 8 featuring more dinosaurs, and Series 9 which went back to dragons. And for the larger dragon sets, we got a blue Titan dragon named Rhaegar, which was a recolor of the 2006 one, and finally we got the Fire Skiff warship, a bizarre set that featured a new faction called the Mercroven, but used the original microfigure design. To this day, the purpose of this set remains unclear, but officially, this marks the end of Mega Bloks Dragons, as later, Mega would replace it with a brand new action theme called Legends of King Arthur. But that's a story for another day. So what happened? Why did Dragons end so abruptly? Well, former Mega employees have said in the past that the cancellation wasn't because of poor sales, but because the company wanted to try something new. And I actually think that is true, though I think it's more complicated than that. You see, Dragons was born out of the fantasy trend of the late 2000s. However, trends change and kids grow up. Mega understood this. Thus, why they tried to reinvent Dragons multiple times in order to appeal to newer generations. But because of their financial situation, the product was plagued with quality control issues, and overall, fans didn't respond well to it. For Mega, it was simply easier to kill off the brand and start from scratch than to keep investing money into it, hoping that lightning could strike twice. But don't get it twisted, Mega Bloks Dragons should not be considered a failure. Sure, it may have not been a generation-defining brand, but it was the longest-running original theme Mega Bloks ever produced, and its DNA echoes through everything the company made afterwards. Sure, it went out quietly, and most people rarely talk about it anymore. But at its peak, Dragons was so strong, it could stand toe-to-toe with LEGO. And it helped Mega carve out its own identity, firmly establishing itself as the second best construction toy in the world. But hey, that's just my brick opinion. Special shout out to Drathenar, Doombringer, and Dante Joestar for their special contributions in the writing of this video. As always, I'm Ace, thanks for watching, and take care.